In terms of the design process, what we'll be doing is identify, immerse, reframe, ideate, build, and test, which is really just the overall breakdown of what the design thinking process looks like. So far, we've been identifying the last few meetings that we've had, the problems that we're going to be working on, and the mission of the MELE product itself. You guys have been immersing yourselves into the subject matter and meeting with your teammates. And today we're going to reframe, get a better understanding of systems thinking as we continue to go forward in this overall project. The process of design is a squiggle. So it's this research and synthesis process where you begin your concept and prototype to ultimately end up at the design. One thing that I've been saying to many of you as I've met with you independently, especially for those that this is your first time participating in a design process in general, is that in the very beginning, it becomes a very messy exploration of what the subject matter is and attempting to identify what the problem is that you're attempting to explore. But once you have enough information to identify what the problem is, it makes building the prototype a lot less messy than the initial aspect of identifying the problem in the overall design process going forward a lot easier, because you have your problem, your research, and your prototype that you've tested in order to give you insights on what the final deliverable should be. So I say all of that to say that in the beginning, if you feel that there's some confusion or ambiguity, or you're not 100% certain as to where you will be going with your prototypes, you're probably still hearing the squiggle. I always recommend that people embrace that ambiguity and use it as an opportunity to figure out what skill sets you and your teammates have, and with that perspective and skill sets, in combination with the overall mission of the product, identify a problem and solution that you guys can fulfill utilizing the skill sets and the design processes that we've given you. After this workshop, you'll be able to synthesize your research to identify insights and questions, reevaluate assumptions about community needs, define design goals informed by research insights, and set and communicate realistic measures of success. So let's talk about immersion. You are going to analyze research for insights to inform solution development. So your research can include, but it's not limited to, photoethnographics. I'm sorry, Ezra. Photoethnographic studies, stories, note-taking, statistics, data, any facts that you have, in order to assist you in synthesizing information to give you better insights that you can then utilize in order to craft your prototypes. Your insights are new realizations that are directly applicable to your team's future concepts. Insight principles are different from facts or statistics. Facts collect data on the problem, typically static and isolated, mostly deal with quantitative value. Insights are the why behind the data, hints towards the future, and often deal with users' motivations, premeditations, or behavior. All right, when developing your insights, we distinguish between findings and insights. Findings, for example, are a finding, for example, would be a patient often not compliant to advice. This makes their conditions worsen and physicians frustrated. An insight would be patients are so nervous during appointments that they don't listen to their doctors. So by looking at those two things, you can see how one can actually help you better frame the problem going forward, especially as you're getting ready to develop a potential prototype or propose a possible solution after you've identified a problem. Insight principles. Insights can inform your team in two ways, directional and descriptive. For directional, they help you choose a direction to go in while researching and narrowing your how can we statement. I'm sorry. Okay, and descriptive hints at qualities your future concept should have and prepare your team to ideate. Insights come from multiple different types of research. For example, Ross.
Yeah,
Could you help me with this one?
Yeah. So this is a team from DFA Northwestern called Fruit Buddy, and Fruit Buddy's "How can we" statement was, how can we reduce childhood obesity? And through their research, they went to grocery stores and asked families with children a lot of questions to learn that children are more likely to eat something if they pick it out themselves, but they lack the opportunity to do so in grocery stores. And I like this particular insight because it kind of gives you the context and it gives you a setting, that kind of directional point of view that points you towards either a place or an experience that someone might be facing. And the opportunity gap that's being addressed is that these kids can't pick out the food, but if they pick it out, they'll have a sense of ownership over it. They might eat it. And by eating healthier foods, therefore, they'd eat healthier. And that goes to that larger goal of reducing childhood obesity. And this is actually a photo from their prototype and testing phase, where they were creating like a fake grocery store simulation and asked young kids to try it out and shop with this tool that they invented. And it looks like, Francis, your hand's up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know specifically for this project, will we get like, will we receive a written brief, or will we like, will we understand exactly what we're solving for?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Ross. I
go
apologize.
for it.
Well, I think the thing that we were attempting to articulate is what makes us different than a traditional design process is usually as designers, we're used to getting a brief and used to having a problem identified for us. This project actually puts you in a position where you're identifying the problem yourself and then proposing a solution. So the idea of having a brief that lists the problem for you or has these pre-measured research items that are given to you for you to identify what the problem is isn't necessarily what we're doing. Placing you in the design thinking process is us giving you enough facts to allow you to then develop your how might we statement and then choose a direction with your team going forward. Does
Would
that
that potentially mean that we all solve quote unquote different problems if we're is that cool? Like if everyone isn't shooting for the same goal or answer, but each of us find different opportunities for us to design, is that what we're going for?
uh I think so. And Ross, you can let me know if I'm misspeaking. But I think in reality, whenever you have a large swaths of teams that are working on a fairly large project, the approach to solve a particular issue might be completely different, especially depending on the skill sets of the people that are on the team. So one example that I use whenever teaching design research or design thinking to my students is car accidents. So if the problem that we're attempting to solve is the number of car accidents that happen annually, and I'm teaching this to a group of graphic designers, realistically, the team that's working on this have no ability to manufacture brake pads, engines, or anything else as far as the mechanics of the car. But what graphic designers do have the skill sets to do is attribute that problem to any interfaces that each driver has to deal with. So that may become a problem of how do we limit the amount of time a driver needs to look at the dashboard in order to identify speed or any other information necessary when driving? Or how can we place directional mechanisms in the vehicle that doesn't force the driver to take their eyes off of the road? So it becomes an interaction between the problem and the skill sets of the team themselves, where they're now taking ownership of the area their practice contributes to the overall vehicle at hand. So if we have a large cohort of people that are broken down into several different teams, some of them are engineers, some of them are graphic designers, interior designers, nurses, or whatever the case may be, based off of their skill sets and practices, their solutions and their problems that they're attempting to address, or the area of the problems they choose to address may be completely different. This doesn't make anybody's approach wrong. It just gives you a better idea of the nuances of the problem that we're attempting to address. Ross, does that sound right, or am I misspeaking?
No, it sounds great. And Kyra, you summed it up really nicely too. We do have a starting field, a direction that we're going in, and that's that starting how can we. And actually in this presentation, we're going to look at how each team uses reframe to further scope down and rewrite their how can we statement to become more specific in that larger field of building an authentic movement, which, like reducing car accidents, can be done multitudes of ways. And the task that we're coming up with as designers on this project is really exploring and proposing new innovative ways to build that movement that centers science, self-esteem, and healthy practices in that starting how can we statement. And we can go over a little bit more around what's included in that afterwards, Francis. But for anyone else, any other questions on synthesis? I saw another hand up, but I think Urja, I don't know if you still had that question.
Yeah, I think what I wanted to say was kind of covered up in what Amari said and what Kyra said. I think that's what I wanted to point out, that we do have a broad level idea of what the problem statement is, but then digging into the problem statement is what we as individual teams need to take care of. However, I still had one question, is like, during the course of the whole project, do you think, does it depend on the team, or do you have an idea of like till what stage we will be able to reach as a team? Like, will we be able to reach to the design phase, or will we still doing the user research phase during the whole month or whatever time frame we have?
Yeah. So each of the 8 weeks is a different step of the design process. And by the end of Expo, which is mid-August, we'll all be pitching our concepts, and at least each team will have built a low fidelity prototype to showcase and explain their solutions that they'll make once we get to that part of the process.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a part of synthesis as well is clustering the information that you have. We typically, whenever I do a cluster, I'm usually clustering things based off of categorical measures in order to get a better understanding of the information that I have, especially the data points that I've collected during my research process. Sometimes you can cluster them based off of how they impact or affect your stakeholders. Other times you can cluster them based off of different types of categories in general, whether it's for the image to the right, issues of education, speed, hunger, home, culture, parental influence, things of that nature. But taking those insights and then clustering them can help you identify patterns and areas of opportunities as far as potential design solutions are concerned. You can also synthesize through a visual map of information. The image to the left actually uses a user journey map as an opportunity to identify user pain points. This is also another opportunity that you can utilize. This is also another framework that you can utilize to identify opportunities for potential solutions. So if you map out how a user may experience the use of a particular service or product, or may be experiencing particular things, these in-between points actually give you that opportunity to identify areas that may be difficult for that user, may disrupt continuous use or coming back to said product or said experience, and figuring out ways that you can clear up potential bottlenecks. And you can also use matrices which compare different properties, such as comparing how different people act or think in different locations.
Yeah, can I expand on this side a little bit, Omari? Because this also relates to that Fruit Buddy case study that we're kind of looking at through this presentation. Here you can see how different stakeholders, such as like on the right there, that column has kids, siblings, parents, so you can start to identify and compare all the behaviors and things that they're doing at different places in a really quick way. So what is a kid doing in a store versus what is a parent doing at home to, in this larger context of addressing childhood obesity, try to make an impact in that space. So this particular matrix and that kind of person versus place comparison can be really helpful, especially as we get to reframe and are starting to identify who do we mainly want to focus on in our project, and where do we want to focus the interaction and our possible intervention that our solution might take place in. Thanks.
No problem, no problem. You can also synthesize through diagrams, so visually describe relationships between different people, objects in your problem space, or describe cause and effects relationships. This is also a really helpful tool. If you guys hear noise in the background, I am dadding at home, so please forgive me. So now let's talk about the reframe. Reframe is your opportunity to articulate what future solutions need to be achieved, define as a group your desired changes, and focus on implementing these desired changes before you begin ideating your prototypes and solutions. The outcomes of reframe are typically to identify your design goals, craft your how might we statements or your problem statement, and what your measure of success would be. All of this goes into influencing your ideation process. Design goals are statements generated from your insights that drive your idea or your concept. Design principles or guidelines, ideals, features or ideas that are important for the final design to embody. They are the rules that you set up for design to directly address the stakeholders' needs. All right, so we want you to turn your insights into design goals. How 8CW statement, or how might we statement prior to reframe. How can we encourage kids to eat healthy? The insights: children are more likely to eat something if they pick it out themselves, but lack opportunity to do so in grocery stores. Design goal: give children a sense of agency in selecting. Children are drawn to bright colors within reach, but food in the produce section is hard to reach and view. Design goal: allow kids to interact with their fruits and veggies directly in the produce section. So if you guys can see, similar, tying back to what we mentioned earlier, these insights and identified problems that are listed give opportunity for potential design goals and solutions. But this, of course, requires research to gain these insights to then propose a design solution or goal.
Yeah. Oh, can I jump on that?
Sorry.
This is going from insights to design goals, I think, is one of the most important parts of the design process. I think reframe is the most important step too, that we'd be going through as designers throughout this process, because you set the foundation and you're creating the kind of guidelines for the rest of your project and the trajectory that you want to go into. Again, these are all examples from the real project Fruit Buddy that we can see that insight before and the design goal. One other way to think about the design goal that my colleague Glory explained to the cohort yesterday is, if you're designing a table for kids as a particular project and you're trying to make a really great meal, but you need a kids table, what are the must-haves that you're going to need for that table? Like, what for kids so it has to be short enough for them to sit at. So what are those must-dos that your solution, whether or not it's a table, whether or not it's actually, a picnic, like what type of characteristics need to be embodied so that you can achieve your goal in that how can we statement. And this is a little unintuitive because you're creating the adjectives for your solution, but not necessarily identifying the noun of the solution. So you're describing it before you go into ideate, so that, whether or not you make a table or whether or not you make a bar seating, like a high top thing, like there's lots of ways that you can create something, but you'll know the best ideas are the ones that you believe are able to address and meet those goals that you're setting out for your design. So it's a test for me for design goals is you can put the word should in front of it. Like, our idea should give children a sense of agency and selection. And you want to avoid solutioning or prematurely naming what the solution is. So you don't say our table should give children a sense of agency and selection, because therefore you've kind of already decided you're going to make a table, and then of course you're going to make a table. So don't limit yourself before going into ideate. but give yourself the tools to help you make the best decision after you create lots of ideas and ideate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so starting on a how can we statement. How can we build an authentic skincare movement that centers science, self-esteem, and healthy practices so everyone can love the skin that they're in? All right, refine how can we statement. What we started with, how can we build an authentic skincare movement that centers science and self-esteem and healthy practices so everyone can love the skin that they're in? That's large scope, full of potential and ability to explore. When you're refining the how HCW, the refine how can we statement you'll create during reframe, narrow scope, specify user behavior in place. So this may be an example just shooting off the top of my head. If we're narrowing scope, rather than focusing on self-esteem and healthy practices so everyone can love the skin that they're in, maybe that narrows it down to people that have unhealthy skin practices that have been passed down due to cultural myths and biases. So that becomes a little bit narrower than saying everybody, because everybody's exposure to skincare will be completely different. Specify user behavior in place. So you can then say people that have unhealthy skincare practices based off of cultural myths that have been passed down. That behavior could be the perpetuation of these myths and using particular products that might not be good for their skin. But the place that you've narrowed it down could also be a location or region. Or particular community that you're attempting to research and work around with. Ross, so does also is that a good summation of refining the how might we statement?
Yeah, and there's a little bit more in the next slides too.
Awesome. All right, so creating guiding questions that focus your team by asking how can we user plus space plus behavior. How can we encourage kids to directly interact with healthy foods in the produce section? How can we help parents to discuss healthy eating habits with their child in the checkout line? How can we provide kids with ownership over produce that their family picks in the grocery store?
Yeah, so I'll expand on this one. Again, this is Fruit Buddy, and these are some of the questions that they were asking after they identified those design goals and were doing their research. And, you know, I pointed out that matrix that we saw earlier as kind of a tool to help you create these particular phrases. And if we're imagining, you know, that first versus the second, how can we question, like how can kids interact with foods in the produce section? If you just kind of imagine what that could look like and what possible solutions to that question might look like, they're probably very different from the second one, which is asking parents to discuss healthy eating habits with their children in a checkout line. And that's kind of, again, this point of reframe is to prepare yourself for ideate, and you'd actually ideate individually for both of those how can we statements. Have different sessions for each how can we statement, because the context is so different. The ideas to make that is so different. So by being able to kind of narrow things down in that way and being very specific, if you think of reframe, think of specificity as kind of when it comes to these how can we statements, will be a really great asset for when you're going into ideate. An analogy for this is if you were seeing like a new movie trailer and it said 3 people traveled to a place and then something happened, that sounds like a really boring movie and I don't want to watch it. Whereas I was like, 3 princesses jumped out of a burning airplane and landed in the middle of the desert. Oh my gosh, what's happening? I can imagine being there. And as the storytelling people that we are, as humans, we can start to get involved and think about what's going to happen next. So you want to create the environment for you and your team to have the questions that are going to be really fruitful when you're generating lots of ideas later.
Yeah.
And to point to Riddy's point in the chat too, this kind of, you know, there's an absence of solutioning, of saying what the concept is in these how can we statements. Whereas like his question, you don't say that you need a good bottle opener, you'd rather say, how can I design a good way to access wine from a bottle? Because that leaves the space open for you to use imagination and innovate new ways to do a task rather than assuming that there's an existing way that we're just trying to make a little bit better.
My apologies, guys. All right. So how can we user plus space plus behavior? Measures of success, tangible metrics that describe end goals, indicate your ideas if your ideas have made an impact in your stakeholders' lives. In hospitals that use our solutions, there are 50% less hospitals acquired infections per year. Hospital staff that use our solution wash their hands at least 60% more than before. Nurses and doctors report being interested in our idea and being willing to try it out.
I'll jump in on that one too a little bit more. Like in those parentheses too, there's that short term, medium term, long term. And these are questions that you kind of ask to just know if you're going in the right direction. You'd probably for this project think about that short term because we're kind of in a sprint. Once a week, we're doing a different step. But how can you get indicators from the people that you test with that you're going in a direction that is resonating with them? And that can be really good evidence to help you in your pitch and convince and build that momentum and have evidence for people to continue developing your idea. Again, these metrics are tools that you use to measure later. So this is kind of as you're making a lot of tool making for later to make your lives easier. So the measures of success is when you have a product, what is that large goal that you're going for in that long-term solution that can help you explain, what you're doing in a way that's not just explaining what the thing is that you've made, but what the end goal that you're trying to achieve. But thinking about, like just yes, no, you don't need to get too scientific with the numbers because that might be hard to distinctly measure, or you'd have to just be a little bit more intentional with how you design your testing experience. But that yes or no, what's resonating, why and why not kind of conversations that we'll get to in a few weeks when we have concepts and we're presenting them for feedback from our stakeholders. That kind of indication helps you determine if you need to pivot or continue, or if you are on a really good path.
All right, relating insights, measures of success to the how might we statement. How can we reduce childhood obesity rates? How will we know this future manifests? The rate of childhood obesity decreases. All right, can we realistically gather that information? Yes, by properly scoping your how might we statement, and no, you can pretty much indicate that you need to narrow your how might we statement. Outcomes of a reframe. I'm sorry. Goals and milestones. 3 to 4 design criteria. 2 to 3 refine. 3 to 4 design criteria. 2 to 3 refine how can we statements, and 3 to 4 measures of success. Ross, could you help me with this one?
Yeah. So we just finished our reframe presentation, and this is just a reminder of the goals and milestones that we're working towards the outcomes of reframe. This has been posted in the goals and milestones. Everything's also listed in the syllabus that we shared out last week, but they're in the Slack channel. So the goal as you're synthesizing your research and getting into reframe is to have these strong design criteria or design goals. Sorry, I didn't catch that. That you can use to articulate what should your concept do, and you not necessarily name what the solution is yet, but describe whatever solution, an idea that you think would make a really strong candidate for improving our challenge space. And then those refined how can we statements, that example that we saw, those were 3 really distinct how can we statements for different users, behaviors, and place. And you can create a lot more, but try to be selective. And as we're being convergent in this moment of synthesis, or just starting to pare down and go for the ones that we feel most strongly about as a team, you might have to say no to some pretty interesting opportunities, or at least put them on a shelf and consider them. And then the 3 to 4 measures of success, again, those are down the road, what is the impact that you're using? Like if we did this, more people will get less sunburns or something like that. Like what are those measures of success that you as, a scientific person, if you had a control group versus someone was using your thing, how would you know that yours made a difference? So designers are secretly scientists in a lot of ways when we go to test, and that's kind of those measures that we're hoping for is what those are. But again, so these are just the goals and milestones for the week. Amazing.
Everyone, please forgive me for the background noise. I have 2 sick kids here at home with me, so like I'm like trying to read this while also like, sending to them at the same time.
Thank you so much, Amari, for doing that on top of all of your fatherly duties. And he just moved, so can we give a big round of applause to Amari? Virtual round of applause with borrowing from American Sign Language. Thank you so much for helping us think about Reframe and this step. We want to jump in. Any outstanding Qs, oh my gosh, questions, Q&A session real fast. That if people, and I know I see some Unilever folks that were on yesterday and today too, if you have anything that stood out to you or other bits that you'd like to share with the group.
No, thank you, Ross. I couldn't participate yesterday. I'm kind of involved in and understanding more here about the process. I think that is a fantastic explanation of the process. But no, I don't have any particular questions. I was just trying to listen in, and if you have any questions, try to share. I don't know if Jacqueline and Tiff, you have some build.
Nothing major from my end, but Tiffany, I know you had a really great point yesterday that I would like to reiterate about the end goal doesn't always have to be physical. It can also be digital. So just having that option between the two of what we're trying to accomplish. So feel free to build on that.
Yeah. Excuse me. I really enjoyed today's session. I also enjoyed yesterday's. I would, Jacqueline, to your prompt, I would bring to this team also exactly like the design visual showed of where we are. Really stress your divergent thinking in this point and kind of get into the really feeling our consumer. And I know as Jacqueline and the team shared through the immersion stimulus in prior sessions, there were questions about consumers who we are talking to now and some consumers we might not be talking to that you think we should be talking to. Those could also be certain provocations you sit with when you think through the how can we and whom we should be bringing into this skincare tribe, if you will. And yeah, just to double click on Jacqueline's point, both thinking through ways that we build that community in a digital context, in a physical context, things that we might be thinking about, but even more things that you don't see us doing today. And to the question and commentary from earlier, we'd love to see the teams come with multiple solutions. So every idea is a good idea right now. And then hopefully we have multiple solutions that get refined. So for me, it's the success is both what you deliver at the end, but also seeing those ideas that you thought through and maybe even discarded through the process, all are valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for us on reframe synthesis? Anyone have any experiences that have worked well for you in doing any of this work previously? I would love to learn from you too, if you have anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think that in the past when I've done projects similar to this, I think just breaking down even the how might we into those chunks, because there's some important words in there, like even the well, what does authentic mean? Like, you know, what is a movement? Like, you know, instead of trying to take the whole statement at once, like how can you break those apart, and then maybe that leads to a solution.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of actually focusing on particular words and then like slowing them down, because realistically, a lot of those things are very subjective. So my idea of a movement might not be the same idea as somebody else's, but identifying to the group, identifying within your group how you're defining what a movement is, and then creating solutions that empower that particular definition could be a really powerful place to start.
We have a question from Riddy. Can you tell what design criteria are again? Yes, so design criteria, we use the word design goals in this presentation, except at the end there, we missed that, but they're the same thing. So design criteria, based on all of your insights and their observations that you're making during your research, these are the core things that any solution that you make should do to be successful. And I like to think of design goals with the word should. Like, you know, if we see a grocery in the context of the pandemic, maybe, you know, you want to build a grocery cart that is antimicrobial or something, and should have the characteristic that it's, you know, able to be cleaned or something like that. And to catch myself, I said a grocery cart, but some cases, you know, oh, we need a way to like clean our hands, and it should be accessible. It should be easily portable with me because I'm on the go all the time. And so by learning about the stakeholders and the way that they go around, you can customize what the solution looks like. And examples of thinking about this, you know, if it's someone who is a skincare, you know, evangelist who loves talking about it, their needs are going to be very different than someone who's never used sunscreen before. And so by understanding and building empathy and that how that person or that group of people lives their life and what they're really concerned and motivated about, you can then be able to more quickly and more nuanced articulation of design goals that would meet their specific needs. So typically you only need 3 to 4 is kind of a nice number that I've been able to manage with in my design goals, because if you're saying it should do 20 things, you're probably not going to do any of them. So an art and design in this converge moment is synthesizing them down and selecting like 3 good ones that you really want to focus on and encourage and say, yeah, if these 3 things happen in whatever we make, we're in a really good way. And all of those, again, are from your insights and from your observations and from your research. So everything builds on the step before it and is derived from your core interactions with the humans in the problem. That's where the human-centered design is kind of the core, and then everything builds out around it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I would like to say too, I love nerding out about like framing problem statements. So if any of your groups are having difficulty with, sorry, my kids are also obsessed with marbles. So if anybody is struggling in their groups with framing a problem statement, or struggling to narrow down their marble statement, please let me know. I would be more than willing to meet with you guys to kind of talk you through that process, or even to just brainstorm ways in which, you know, we could better align this so that you guys can have, you know, a clearer direction in the path that you're going to take. I know I'm not alone in that. Ross, Joy, and everyone else on the DFA team would also be willing to do that, but also just wanted to let you guys know, if you need us, we're available. I don't know, John, if you heard Professor say this at Kent State, but it's also been one of my pedagogical approaches where I like to allow people to struggle a little bit in their exploration, but of course, jumping in to help. So our professors at Kent would tell me all the time, we won't let you drown, but we love to see you kick. So if you feel like you're in the process of drowning, please let us know so we can jump in and save you. But we will let you kick around for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like I could speak to that for a little bit. Like I think for us and where I come from, it's really about kind of embracing the unknown, and that, you know, nothing is truly a wrong answer at this point. And so you kind of have to be comfortable. You can't be scared to find what could be the best solution. So it's really just, you know, speaking your mind and honoring all of your ideas, because you never know which one is actually going to be the best solution until they come out. Because you could say something and a team member could take it and it can go somewhere that you never thought was possible. So
Yeah,
it's really just about, like, you know, trusting your ideas, trusting yourself, and relying on your team.
yeah. And to John's point, any idea that you guys have in terms of it being a solution is really speculative until you actually prototype and test it. Until you've seen its ability to work or not to work, and then you improve it from there. So all of these insights that you're gathering to lead into a potential prototype or a prototype solution is really an exploration stage, a speculative idea and function. You have tangible insights and facts that you're going to be gathering, well, tangible facts and research methods that will be informing your insights, which of course will inform the direction you go in your prototypes. But everything is unknown. You don't know for certain if it'll work until you actually test it. So I would recommend, again, just embracing the ambiguity of the speculation phase of this process.
And one of the other things you can reach out, there's a feedback channel in Slack is for like this quick conversation. You can just pull in any design coach into that. Like, here's our draft, how can we statement? What do you think? Like, it doesn't have to be a full deck presentation, 25 minutes explaining the history of how can we statements. We would love quick and dirty feedback so that we can help you no matter where you are in the process. And we're happy to meet you wherever you're at. But you'll have to, again, you have to ask or flag for us to jump into the pool with you. We're happy to assist as much as possible, and we really do love doing this. But feel free to use that feedback to both ping your design coaches. And also I want to give a shout out, Unilever is in the Slack as well. We'll be building a distinct Unilever channel, but for right now we can use Immerse so that you can go there to engage and have conversations with the Unilever folks and the MELE team. So if there's any scientific questions, or if you're trying to like do a little bit more digging of research or things about that, feel free to jump in. And Unilever, you're totally okay to be in all the channels too. Ask a lot of feedback for everything. Hello, Mari. And
You want to say hi?
Hi.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ross. I mean, I think that we are totally fine. I don't know if we can be absolutely immediately in our response, but definitely we're going to see each other, and we're going to be seeing the questions and answering as soon as we can. And honestly, I mean, I don't know if there are special rules for the Slack, Ross, in terms of when it's prompting the questions, or how to answer, the length, or something like that. If there is something, please let us know, so then we have more information to answer properly.
Great. Amazing. Thank you so much. Any other last minute questions, comments, concerns? I know we kind of shifted in future statements. We moved our Monday workshop to these huddles because Monday we had an awesome time with Unilever during their research presentation. So know that next week on Monday will be those ideation workshops where we'll jump into, you know, what most people consider the quintessential design, coming up with lots of ideas, but reframe is really important because you're setting the direction for that idea generation. So we'll have a workshop and go over some ideation principles, kind of how to, again, we'll go through a similar, like you're doing in a research, divergent moment of coming up with lots of ideas, and a convergent moment where you select your ideas. And those typically follow that pattern. And that appears in a lot of different ways throughout the design process. And then next week during the huddle times, It will be more time with your teams. We'll be floating around with your design coaches, and Unilever will be floating around to be able to address core questions and give you work time and reflect on ideation, as well as prepare for next week's first charrette, which is a kind of stand-up share out. We'll learn how you have done your research and your insights and your how can we statements and the ideas that you're excited about. You'll practice presenting those on Saturday, the 23rd. So that is, we only have 2 weekend events, which is that Saturday to give most people the amount of time to be present for those. And that will be during this time slot here, this 10 to 11 on Saturday, the 23rd. Again, everything calendar is in the syllabus. The weekly goals are in Slack. We also posted a whole bunch of resources in Slack in the resources channel regarding Reframe. If you have any other resources, stories, those are available there. And we'll see you all on Monday. But in the meantime, we'll see you on Slack. Please ask us feedback. One challenge is just post your draft how can we in there by the end of the week, and we'll give you feedback. And we will do that. And then we have a question. By when will we know if and when our teams will be merged? It depends if there's a lot of unresponsive folks in your particular group. And so if you have some floaters that haven't participated yet, we're going to be purging them this week, like starting today to Friday. So hopefully everything's done as soon as possible. And then if you have like 5-ish, you'll still be a team. Anything less than that, we'll probably try to merge to give everyone a team experience, because, you know, as John, you said earlier, being able to bring an idea to many groups of people, that's the whole idea of these multidisciplinary teams, is to benefit from that group think. And then Kyra.
Yeah, Ross, I just had a quick question. I know that you guys said in the beginning that there's a like morning and evening session, and I'm only seeing that I've been invited to the morning one. And like it worked for this week, but it may not work consecutively.
Yeah.
Is there, do I just reach out to Joy about that, or?
Yeah. You can ping Joy in the Slack or in that help channel that we've created. That's a perfect way to do that. And yes, again, you only should be invited to both the Monday sessions.
Oh, okay, but not both of the Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you all so much.
I had a quick question.
Yes.
Do we have to also both the Monday sessions are compulsory? I just got confused about that.
So those are the identical sessions. So attend the one that works best for you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Yes. Lots of questions. We love answering questions. It's how we learn. And this is also our first time doing this large of a project. So we're asking you a lot of questions, and this is really helpful for us to set up this experience for you all. So keep asking questions, but enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you so much for coming out to learn a little bit more about Reframe. Enjoy synthesizing all of your research this week and into next, and we will see you on Monday for those ideation workshops. Bye, everybody. Thank you.